Hi everybody, students and parents. I've really been missing seeing you every day at school, and I know many of you have heard about my reading program. I'm hoping many of you join the Built On Book Club. It's a wonderful way to get invited to one of our houses. It's also a wonderful way to keep engaged with reading. I thought maybe one of the best things I could do is take you on a journey over the course of however long we're going to be home. Since I've been asking you to share your love of reading with me, I thought I would share my love of reading with you. This might be a little clunky as we get started, but I'm hoping you'll tune in and kind of enjoy a chapter a day with me as I take you into the world of Prydian. These are the Chronicles of Prydian by Lloyd Alexander, some of my favorite books from when I was little. There are 5 books in the series, and one of the cool things about these books is it takes you on a journey from the first book, the Book of 3, which we'll be starting together, all the way through The High King, Book 5. These are award-winning books, but books that not many people have heard of. So if you're huge fans of Harry Potter or the Chronicles of Narnia, I always argue that these are the best books that you've never heard of. I like them better than Harry Potter, which might be a controversial statement for some of you, but I think if you follow along with me, you'll really enjoy it too. An added bonus, as I read the chapters, I'll be posting questions from the books. And if you answer questions correctly for your house, you'll get points. So that's kind of a cool added bonus of reading the books along with me. So let's go ahead and get started. One final feature about the books, if you choose to order them and follow along with me, they do advance in complexity from the first book to book 5. So the first book is probably a 4th or 5th grade reading level, although I think my audience of all ages might enjoy listening to it. But it's probably a 4th or 5th grade reading level in the beginning, moving all the way up in book 5 to a more advanced, maybe 8th, 9th, 10th high school reading level. So that's kind of a cool feature if you decide to read these books as you grow or as you learn. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and we'll hope that there are no major interruptions from one of my 7 children, but we'll deal with it if they do. So this is Lloyd Alexander's The Book of 3. It is the Chronicles of Prydian, Book 1. Something I really like about these books is when you open up the book, you can see the map for the land of Prydian, so you can get to know the world that our main character lives in. And this is the Book of 3 by Lloyd Alexander. Our first chapter, Chapter 1, The Assistant Pig Keeper. Taran wanted to make a sword, but Call, charged with the practical side of his education, decided on horseshoes. And so it had been horseshoes all morning long. Taran's arm ached. Soot blackened his face. At last he dropped the hammer and turned to Call, who was watching him critically. "Why?" Taran cried. "Why must it be horseshoes? As if we had any horses." Call was stout and round, and his great bald head glowed bright pink. "Lucky for the horses," was all he said, glancing at Taran's handiwork. "I could do better at making a sword," Taran protested. "I know I could." And before Call could answer, he snatched the tongs, flung a strip of red-hot iron to the anvil, and began hammering away as fast as he could. "Wait! Wait!" cried Call. "That's not the way to get after it!" Heedless of Call, unable even to hear him from above the din, Taran pounded harder than ever. Sparks sprayed the air. But the more he pounded, the more the metal twisted and buckled until finally the iron sprang from the tongs and fell to the ground. Taran stared in dismay. With the tongs, he picked up the bent iron and examined it. "Not quite the blade for a hero," Call remarked. "It's ruined," Taran glumly agreed. "It looks like a sick snake," he added ruefully. "As I tried telling you," said Call, "you had it all wrong. You must hold the tongs, so. When you strike, the strength must flow from your shoulder and your wrist must be loose. You can hear it when you do it right. There's a kind of music in it. Besides," he added, "this is not the metal for weapons." Call returned the crooked, half-formed blade to the furnace, where it lost its shape entirely. "I wish I might have my own sword," Taran sighed. "And you could teach me sword fighting." Wisht, cried Call. Why should you want to know that? We have no battles at Caerdalban. We have no horses either, objected Terran, but we're making horseshoes. Get on with you, said Call, unmoved. That is for practice. And so would this be, Terran urged. Come on, teach me the sword fighting. You must know the art. Call's shining head glowed even brighter. A trace of smile appeared on his face, as though he were savoring something pleasant. True, he said quietly. I have held a sword once or twice in my day. Teach me now, pleaded Terran. He seized a poker and brandished it, slashing at the air and dancing back and forth over the hard-packed earthen floor. See, he called, I know most of it already. Hold your hand, chuckled Call. If you were to come against me like that, with all your posing and bouncing, I should have chopped you into bits by this time. He hesitated a moment. Look you, he said quickly, at least you should know there is a right way and a wrong way to go about it. He picked up another poker. Here now, he ordered, with a sooty wink. Stand like a man. Terran brought up the poker. While Call shouted instructions, they set to parrying and thrusting with much banging and clanking and commotion. For a moment, Terran was sure he had the better of Call, but the old man spun away in amazing lightness of foot, and now it was Terran who strove desperately to ward off Cal's blows. Abruptly, Call stopped, and so did Terran, his poker poised in midair. In the doorway of the forge stood the tall, bent figure of Dalban. Dalban, master of Caerdalban, was 379 years old. His beard covered so much of his face, he seemed always to be peering over a gray cloud. On the little farm, while Terran and Call saw to the plowing, sowing, weeding, and reaping, and all of the other tasks of husbandry, Dalban undertook the meditating, an occupation so exhausting he could accomplish it only by lying down and closing his eyes. He meditated an hour and a half following breakfast, and again later in the day. The clatter from the forge had roused him from his morning meditation. His robe hung askew over his bony knees. Stop that nonsense directly, said Dalban. I'm surprised at you, he added, frowning at Call. There is serious work to be done. It wasn't Call, Terran interrupted. It was I who asked to learn the sword play. I did not say I was surprised at you, remarked Dalban. But perhaps I am after all. I think that you had better come with me. Terran followed the ancient man out of the forge, across the chicken run, and into the white thatched cottage. There in Dalban's chamber, moldering tomes overflowed the sagging shelves and spilled onto the floor amid heaps of iron cookpots, studded belts, harps with or without the strings, and other oddities. Terran took his place on the wooden bench, as he always did when Dalban was in a mood for giving lessons or reprimands. I fully understand, said Dalban, setting himself beside his table. In the use of weapons, as in everything else, there is a certain skill, but wiser heads than yours will determine when you should learn it. I'm sorry, said Terran. I should never have... I'm not angry, Dalban said, raising a hand. Only a little sad. Time flies quickly. Things always happen sooner than one expects. And yet, he murmured almost to himself, it troubles me. I fear the Horned King may have some part in this. The Horned King? Asked Terran. We shall speak of him later, said Dalban. He drew a ponderous leather-bound volume toward him. The Book of Three, from which he occasionally read to Terran, and which, the boy believed, held in its pages everything anyone could possibly want to know. As I have explained to you before, Dalban went on, and you have very likely forgotten, Prydian is a land of many contraves, of small kingdoms and many kings, and of course, their war leaders who command the warriors. But there is a high king above them all, said Terran. Math, son of Mathenwy. His war leader is the mightiest hero in Prydian. You told me of him. Prince Gwydion. Yes, I know. There are other things that you do not know, Dalbin said, for the obvious reason that I have not told you. For the moment, I am less concerned with the realms of the living than with the land of the dead, with Anavin. Terran shuddered at the word. Even Dalbin had spoken in a whisper. And with King Aran, Lord of Anavin, Dalbin said. Know this, he continued quickly. Anavin is more than a land of death. It is a treasure house, not only of gold and jewels, but of all things of advantage to men. Long ago, the race of men owned these treasures. By craft and deceit, Aran stole them, one by one, for his own evil uses. Some few of the treasures have been wrested from him, though most lie hidden deep in Anavin, where Aran guards them jealously. But Aran did not become ruler of Prydian, Terran said, and you may be thankful that he did not, said Dalbin. He would have ruled it had it not been for the children of Dawn, the sons of the Lady Dawn and her consort, Balin, king of the sun. Long ago they voyaged to Prydian from the summer country and found the land rich and fair, though the race of men had little for themselves. The sons of Dawn built their stronghold at Cerdathal, far north in the Eagle Mountains. From there they helped regain at least a portion of what Aran had stolen, and stood as guardians against the lurking threat of Anavin. I hate to think of what would have happened if the sons of Dawn hadn't come, Terran said. It was a good destiny that brought them. I'm not always sure, said Dalbin with a smile. The men of Prydian come to rely on the strength of the House of Dawn as a child clings to its mother. They do so even today. Math, the High King, is descended from the House of Dawn. So is Prince Gwydion. By that is all, by the way. Prydian has been at peace, as much as men can be peaceful, until now. What you do not know, Dalbin said, is this. It has reached my ears that a new and mighty warlord has risen, as powerful as Gwydion, some say more powerful. But he is a man of evil, from whom death is a black joy. He sports with death as you might sport with a dog. Who is he? Cried Terran. Dalbin shook his head. No man knows his name, nor has any man seen his face. He wears an antlered mask, and for this reason, he is called the Horned King. His purpose I do not know. I suspect the hand of Aran, but in what manner I cannot tell you. I tell you now for your own protection, Dalbin added. From what I saw this morning, your head is full of nonsense about feats of arms, and whatever notions you may have, I advise you to forget them immediately. There is unknown danger abroad. You are barely on the threshold of manhood, and I have a certain responsibility to see that you reach it, preferably with a whole skin. So you are not to leave Caer Dalbin under any circumstances, not even past the orchard, and certainly not into the forest, not for the time being. For the time being, Terran burst out. I think it will always be for the time being, and it will be vegetables and horseshoes all my life. Tut! There are worse things, said Dalbin. Do you set yourself to be a glorious hero? Do you believe it is all flashing swords and galloping about on horses? As for being glorious... But what of Prince Gwydion? Cried Terran. Yes, I wish I might be like him. I fear, Dalbin said, that is entirely out of the question. But why? Terran sprang to his feet. I know, if I had the chance... Why? Dalbin interrupted. In some cases, he said, we learn more by looking for the answer to a question and not finding it than we do from leaning to the answer itself. This is not one of those cases. I could tell you why, but at the moment it would only be more confusing. If you grow up with any kind of sense, which you sometimes make me doubt, you will very likely reach your own conclusions. Well, they will probably be wrong, he added. However, since they will be yours, you will feel a little more satisfied with the answers. Taryn sank back and sat, gloomy and silent, on the bench. Dalvin had already begun meditating again. His chin gradually came to rest on his collarbone. His beard floated around his ears like a fog bank, and he began snoring peacefully. The spring scent of apple blossoms drifted through the open window. Beyond Dalvin's chamber, Taryn glimpsed the pale green fringe of forest. The fields, ready to cultivate, would soon turn golden with summer. The Book of Three lay closed on the table. Taryn had never been allowed to read the volume for himself. Now he was sure it held more than Dalvin chose to tell him. In the sun-filled room, with Dalvin still meditating and showing no sign of stopping, Taryn rose and moved through the shimmering beams. From the forest came the monotonous tick of a beetle. His hands reached for the cover. Taryn gasped in pain and snatched them away. They smarted as if each of his fingers had been stung by hornets. He jumped back, stumbled against the bench, and dropped to the floor, where he put his fingers woefully into his mouth. Dalvin's eyes blinked open. He peered at Taryn and yawned slowly. "You'd better see Carl about a lotion for those hands," he advised. "Otherwise, I shouldn't be surprised if they blistered." Fingers smarting, the shamefaced Taryn hurried from the cottage and found Carl near the vegetable garden. "You've been at the Book of Three," Carl said. "That's not hard to guess. Now you know better. Well, that's one of the three foundations of learning. See much, study much, suffer much." He led Taryn to the stable where medicines for the livestock were kept and poured a concoction over Taryn's fingers. "What's the use of studying so much when I'm seeing nothing at all?" Taryn retorted. "I think there's a destiny laid on me that I'm not to know anything interesting or do anything interesting. I'm certainly not to be anything. I'm not anything, even, at Caer Dallben." "Very well," said Carl. "If that's all that troubles you, I shall make you something. From this moment on, you are Taryn, Assistant Pig Keeper. You can help me take care of Henwen. See her through, make sure her trough is full, carry her water, give her a good scrubbing every other day." "But that's what I do now," Taryn said bitterly. "All the better," said Carl, "for it makes things that much easier. If you want to be something with a name attached to it, I can't think of anything closer to hand. And it's not every lad who can be an assistant keeper to an oracular pig. Indeed, she's the only oracular pig in Prydian, and the most valuable." "Valuable to Dallben," Taryn said. "She never tells me anything." "Do you think she would?" replied Carl. "With Henwen, you have to know how to ask. Here, what was that?" Carl shaded his eyes with his hand. A black buzzing sound streaked from the orchard and bore on so rapidly and passed so close to Carl's head that he had to leap out of the way. "The bees!" Taryn shouted. "They're swarming." "It's not their time," cried Carl. "There's something amiss." The cloud rose high toward the sun. An instant later, Taryn heard a loud clucking and squawking from the chicken run. He turned to see the 5 hens and the rooster beating their wings. Before it occurred to him, they were attempting to fly. They too were aloft. Taryn and Carl raced to the chicken run, too late to catch the fowls. With the rooster leading, the chickens flapped awkwardly through the air and disappeared over the brow of a hill. From the stable, the pair of oxen bellowed and rolled their eyes in terror. Dalvin's head poked out of the window. He looked irritated. "It has become absolutely impossible for any kind of meditation whatsoever," he said, with a severe glance at Taryn. "I've warned you once." "Something frightened the animals," Taryn protested. "First the bees, and then the chickens flew off." Dalvin's face turned grave. "I've been given no knowledge of this," he said to Carl. "We must ask Henwen about it immediately, and we shall need the letter sticks. Quickly, help me find them." Carl moved hastily to the cottage door. "Watch Henwen closely," he ordered Taryn. "Do not let her out of your sight." Carl disappeared inside the cottage to search for Henwen's letter sticks, the long rods of ash wood carved with spells. Taryn was both frightened and excited. Dalbin, he knew, would consult Henwen only on matters of greatest urgency. Within Taryn's memory, it had never happened before. He hurried to the pen. Henwen usually slept until noon. Then, trotting daintily despite her size, she would move to a shady corner of her enclosure and settle comfortably for the rest of the day. The white pig was continually grunting and chuckling to herself whenever she saw Taryn, and she would raise her wide, cheeky face so that he could scratch under her chin. But this time, she paid no attention to him. Wheezing and whistling, Henwen was digging furiously in the soft earth at the far side of the pen, burrowing so rapidly she would soon be out. Taryn shouted at her, "Henwen!" But the clouds continued flying at great rate. He swung himself over the fence. The oracular pig stopped and glanced around. As Taryn approached the hole, already sizable, Henwen hurried to the opposite side of the pen and started a new excavation. Taryn was strong and long-legged, but to his dismay, he saw that Henwen moved faster than he. As soon as he chased her from the second hole, she returned quickly on her short legs and made for the first. Both by now were big enough for her head and shoulders. Taryn frantically began scraping earth back into the burrow. Henwen dug faster than a badger, her hind legs planted firmly, her front legs plowing ahead. Taryn despaired of stopping her. He scrambled back over the rails and jumped to the spot where Henwen was about to emerge, planning to grab her and hang on until Dalbin and Call arrived. But he underestimated Henwen's speed and strength. In an explosion of dirt and pebbles, the pig burst from under the fence, heaving Taryn into the air. He landed with the wind knocked out of him. Henwen raced across the field and into the woods. Taryn followed. Ahead, the forest rose up dark and threatening. He took a deep breath and plunged after her. And that's the end of chapter 1. In it, we've met Taryn, a couple of key characters in the story, and a very important pig. And already by the end of chapter 1, our hero, Taryn, has broken one of the major rules. So we'll find out what happens to him tomorrow. Thanks for following along. I'll post some questions later. Keep reading.